AITA for telling my mom she won't be invited to my graduation ceremony and every other big life event in the future? F. 23. Will be graduating university this year and my whole family is just really excited about it. And they have always been a huge support for me, especially my mom. Therefore I really want most of them to be there. The issue is mainly with my stepdad. My parents divorced when I was about 5 years old and my mom remarried 2 years later, my dad's childhood best friend. So my parents were not always on best terms. My childhood was kinda bad due to their whole dispute and my stepdad and I always had a strained relationship. The older I got the worse it got. It really took a toll on my mental health and whenever my therapist suggested something to improve my mental health he straight up refused to do it or to even change his ways in the slightest. My mom fought a lot with him due to that for some time but she gave up trying and stayed with him, sometimes just for the sake of my younger half-brother, whom I dearly love and cherish. But having my mom disregard my health for my brothers was still hard to deal with in my early teenage years. A few examples. Stepdad told me, when I was about 10-11, that no one would care about my day and that I should simply stop talking about it cause it was simply annoying to him. When I was on the verge of mentally breaking completely, my therapist suggested a pet as an emotional support. My stepdad hates pets so he just refused even though he was told that I would only get worse without a living being to emotionally support me. When I misbehaved as a child he didn't communicate with me but showed me index cards with his rules. When I still didn't follow through with them I was not allowed to eat and had to sit on the stairs without talking or anything. My younger brother, his son, never had or has to follow through with any rules and misbehaves a lot. No consequences though. Overall he didn't and still does not communicate with me. He did not talk to me for the 12 years I lived with them. He did not treat me like a family member or even a family friend. There were a few smaller things, too, but he's overall not the nicest person. Due to my mom always demanding for him to come to all my mayor life events, my dad missed out on a lot of them, even though I want him to be there every step of the way. She straight up refuses to go without him because my dad is allowed to bring his wife and she doesn't want to show up alone. I kinda get where she is coming from but I don't want to deal with my unresolved feelings and issues on my special occasions. Therefore I told her that if she doesn't want to attend without him she can simply stay away and if she shows up with him she will be uninvited from every single future event. A few of my family members, mainly my mom's, stepdad's side, told me that I am overreacting and being a brat and I should just let him come. This makes me feel insecure about my decision. So AITA? Edit. Because a lot of people seem to have a strong dislike for my mom, I wanted to say some things. She very much knows what happened to me as a child, but she herself was badly abused by her own parents and had to basically raise herself. My dad physically and mentally mistreated her when they were younger and long before I was born, but he never treated me badly. She still tried, and whenever she realized what happened, she tried to give me as much attention as possible to kinda cancel out his neglect. She is a good person, who was mistreated horribly in her life and who was just not fit to be a mother when I was young. I am by no means saying that I condone what she allowed to happen. She's just broken and sometimes broken people tend to do the same to others. Edit 2. My parents are on speaking terms and they both have realized that they treated each other badly. I don't know much about their past relationship but they both turned fights physical sometimes. They both were not good for each other. I love them both dearly but I've grown enough to realize that both were at fault and both failed me when I was a child. My dad and even more my stepmom and their families tried their best to support me as soon as they found out about what happened at my mom's place. But I've kept those things to myself most of the time because I did think that it was normal behavior. I grew up like this ever since I was 6. I did not know any better, but I do know now. Growing up it was no secret my older sister was the favorite child. We could both do something bad and only I would get in trouble. They would often say I forced her to do it. My sister also got better gifts than me. I couldn't ask for anything over $20, while my sister could ask for something in the hundreds and they get it for her. Eventually my sister caught on and used it to her advantage. She would blame me for everything and our parents would believe her. If she wanted something of mine, she would cry to our parents and they would force me to give it to her. It wasn't all bad because while I wasn't my parents' favorite, but I was my aunt's favorite. She couldn't have kids of her own, so she treated me as her own. Unfortunately, my aunt moved 2 hours away to work at a college and I didn't see her as much. When the time came, I went to the college my aunt worked at. She let me move in with her and helped me out financially. My sister never went to college and job hopped. She never had to take work seriously because our parents took care of everything for her. When I left, I went low contact with them because I had no reason for interacting with them. They weren't supporting me emotionally or financially, so what was the point? Now I have my own apartment, good friends, a cat and a good job. I was happy with my life. Recently I got a call from my dad. Apparently they are having a hard time. My sister can't keep a job, my dad is working less hours and my mother's new job pays significantly less, so they can't support all three of them. He asked if my sister could stay with me to lighten the load on them. I said no, I am happy now and getting involved with y'all will just make me miserable. You guys didn't do much for me when I was young, so I don't owe them anything. My dad tried to plead with me, saying they could lose the house and end up homeless. I still refused and hung up. Since then I've been getting calls and text from them begging me for any kind of help. I do feel kinda bad because from their calls I can tell they are close to tears. My aunt says I have every right to not want to help, but every time I hear how bad they are doing I feel guilty. I don't want them to be homeless, but I don't want to get involved. Update. Thank you to everyone who responded and gave me advice. My aunt is going around and collecting money from some family members. I gave a small amount, not enough to where I had to cut back or go without. My aunt is helping my sister find a job and said she would help out with groceries until they are back on their feet. And if my sister leaves that job, she will stop helping, they will be on their own. I blocked them on everything I have and am not worrying. With the help that they are getting, if they are still trying to contact me, they aren't as bad off as they say they are and are probably trying to make things easier for them by having take care of their problems. Also, sorry I didn't reply to anyone. I took a break from my phone so I wouldn't be subjected to my family's constant harassment. I love my wife. She is the light of my life. We have been together 6 years and married for 4. She has 2 wonderful children from a previous marriage. They are with us Monday to Friday and then go with their biological father after school on Friday. I love them very much and I consider them my own children. I work a full-time job as an executive in a technology company. About 50 hours per week, travel about 1 week every 2 months or so. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. She does fantastic. She had her first child at 18 and has been a stay-at-home mom since. This is soon to be important. Recently she met a friend who is 25, single and loves to party. And slowly but surely, my wife started to pick up on this lifestyle. Now we're at full tilt. I took notes of the last 12 weekends just to see if I'm crazy, and I know Reddit loves good data. Counting Friday and Saturdays over the last 12 weekends includes 24 weekend nights, stretching back to the week of Halloween. Out of those 24 days she went out for 17 of them and generally does not come home until after 2 a.m. She texts me generally the whole time she's out, but she drinks, which is fine, smokes, not a fan of, and now has told me she has tried cocaine once or twice. Time for a quick detour. Growing up I had only my mom and her roommates. My mom was a stripper, and her varying and often changing roommates were also strippers. From around the age of 8 would tuck me into bed, tell me she'd see me in the morning and then, unbeknownst to me for a long while, leave to go work at the strip club. I distinctly remember so many times waking up to find the house completely empty and eerily silent and crying myself back to sleep. And I was also very confused as to why my mom would do that to me, but I knew, even if I didn't know the word at the time, I was being abandoned. Eventually I became numb to it. I don't speak to my mom anymore, 24 plus years later. I feel that now. Even as it's Friday and my wife is taking a nap before we go to dinner and drive separate cars so she can go hang with her friends at the bar afterwards until 2 a.m. We've had it out before. I've told her I felt abandoned and her response was, I never got to go out. I had kids. They're with their father on the weekends, so I know they're safe. I'm sorry, I like to go out with my friends. I don't know what to tell you. I wanted to say, I'm sorry you had children. That was your decision. And now you're 30, which is a bad argument. Age shouldn't be a factor here, but I'm winging it. And you're married, and if you want to go sometimes, that's fine. But I think you are going out too much. I'm writing this post because not only am I concerned with am I being the asshole. I have my own hobbies and my own friends, but I like to see my wife. I like to hang out with my wife. She is my best friend. The other reason I'm writing this is because I'm becoming numb to what she's doing it, and I'm not sure if I'm to blame. She is, or we both are. My stepdaughter is 10. I've been in her life for 8 years and we have full custody. She sees her mama once every other week. I also have 2 sons, aged 11 and 9. For the past 6 months or so, my stepdaughter will stand right directly behind me whenever I'm cooking anything. She doesn't want to help me cook. I've asked and she said no because she's afraid of getting burnt. She just stands directly behind or beside me close enough that we are touching whenever I'm cooking, and it's incredibly frustrating. Our kitchen is small as it is, so I have no room to move. I started telling her to stay out of the kitchen when I'm cooking because I need space, and I'm becoming frustrated from either dropping things constantly because I'm tripping over her or constantly having to ask her to move out of the way. Ever since I started telling her to stay out of the kitchen when I'm cooking, she has been making excuses to be in there. Like getting a drink every 5 minutes or wanting to color at the counter versus having her own huge desk in her bedroom or even using the office desk in the living room. If she wanted to learn to cook and help me, that would be one thing. I would be more than willing to teach her. But as I said, she's refused and doesn't want to help me. She just insists on standing right on my heels and watching what I'm doing. Can't even express how many times I have almost burnt her and have burnt myself because of this. So yesterday she came in after I told her not to, and I didn't hear her come in. She was standing right behind me. I went to turn to strain noodles and bumped into her and got boiling water all down my front and all over the floor. I did yell and tell her to get out now. She ran to her room crying. My husband immediately started berating me for hurting her feelings, simply because she's fucking curious. I explained to him the same shit I have a million times before. She is not to be in the kitchen anymore when I'm cooking because I'm exhausted from constantly tripping over her when she has zero intentions to help or learn. I explained that because of her, I just burnt the fuck out of myself, and he just completely ignored it and said I'm the one in the wrong because of her feelings. AITA? And yes, I've spoken to her several times after I've been burnt in the past. She just says, sorry, and continues to do it. So, I used to be married to Judy, 36F, and we have a daughter Scarlett, 13, together, fake names. Judy never wanted kids, but I did, and I assumed she did too. We had her and Judy completely changed. She wasn't caring towards Scarlett. They didn't bond, and she blamed Scarlett for us losing our independence. About a year after, we had a divorce and she gave me everything. It did hurt me that she didn't even want to see Scarlett once a year even. She moved to Seattle months after, started running a business, got really fit. Her cousin told me she even got laser surgery to remove her stretch marks. Since then, Judy has moved to LA and divides her time between there, London, Mumbai, and NYC. She has become a fairly famous influencer and socialite. I check her Instagram every now and then, and she's been at parties with celebrities all over the world and truly seems happy. To her credit, every time her financial situation changed, she would come back and get our child support agreement changed to give more to Scarlett. Every time she'd come, she would spend time with Scarlett. She even kept it the same, even though my new wife makes a lot more money than both of us and we don't need it now. About 3 years ago, she started calling more to talk to Scarlett. She would also come over more, and every spring break, she comes for those 2 weeks. She phones every night unless she's in London, Mumbai, or NYC, in which case she just sends a text. On New Year's, she was at some celebrity's party but still took the time to phone. Now, I'm not saying that this makes up for anything, but she has been a presence in Scarlett's life. Well, We just found out that Judy's grandfather is very ill and he's going to pass away within a month, maybe early March at best. So, she's going to India for spring break for his funeral and has requested to take Scarlett with her. I'm fine with that, my wife is fine with that. However, Scarlett got really upset at the idea of spending 2 weeks in India. I pointed out her mom will take her to all the nice places, she'll get to see great things, meet that part of her family. But she said that it's not fair. So, I pointed out that at the very least, she can get whatever she wants out of her mom in those 2 weeks. My wife overheard and said I was an asshole for telling Scarlett that it's all right for her to use her mom for cash since she has barely been in her life. I pointed out I didn't say that, but we argued, and since then, I realize what I said kind of did amount to that. Was I the asshole? Edit. Judy never told me she did not want kids. She allowed me to believe she did. If I knew she didn't, we would never have gotten married. Throwaway account. I'm 28 YM. I had average childhood. My parents provided everything, but nothing extra. When I was 17, they decided to adopt another child, Chris 7 YM. I went to university at 18 and moved out. My parents told me they could not financially help me because they have another child now. I admit, I resented that. I had to work and go to college. For the first 2 years I couldn't get into university dorms, so I had to rent, which was much more expensive. I can't count how many times I hadn't eaten for 2 to 3 days. It was horrible, and I consider that the worst experience of my life. It got easier after I got into dorms, but I still couldn't afford anything extra, like going to a party or such. In all this years I slowly distanced myself from my parents, and I don't see Chris as my brother. To this day we see each other max 2 times a year, even though we live 25 minutes away. They don't even know I married my partner. This happened at Christmas dinner. In the middle of dinner, my parents told me that Chris is going to university in the same city I live, and if he could stay with me, they would pay for rent and expenses. Now, I live in the townhouse in the middle of all faculties. I'm in prime spot. I don't rent rooms, but if I would, rent would be highest in the city. I was triggered when my parents said they would pay for him, so I said that they can't afford to rent a room in my place and to look elsewhere. All family there were shocked by my response, and my parents were somewhat taken aback. Since then, a couple of family members told me I'm an awe for not helping my family. My parents texted me to reconsider and help my brother, and that he is very upset his big brother won't help him. I told them he is their son, but he is not my brother and I have no obligation towards him. Even Chris texted me and begged me to reconsider, but I just ignore him. And everyone else for that matter. The problem is my partner, who is good, kind soul and is starting to get to me. So, what do you think? My parents always wanted grandchildren, and both my brother and I wanted children, but both of us ended up facing fertility issues with our respective partners. My wife and I eventually decided to start working with a surrogate. Our parents are old-fashioned, but they tried to be happy for us. My brother also tried. His wife did not. His wife is as against the concept of surrogacy as it's possible to be and always has been. We found a friend who was willing, and we now have a son. Sil went crazy. She spent months blasting all of us about how horrible we all were, that we supported all sorts of terrible practices because we were doing this, etc. She refused to go to our baby shower or see us in the hospital, but she did send a new mom kit, meant for our surrogate, with things to help a pregnant person recover from childbirth. My brother apologized for her, but said he couldn't change her mind. A few months later, my brother and his wife announced a spontaneous pregnancy, after more than 5 years of trying. Our parents were thrilled, and so were we. We were willing to put it all behind us. They had a daughter, and it only intensified her views. She refused to bring the baby over for holidays or to meet her cousin because she refused to have her daughter raised to view women as objects. Years later, she softened to have our parents around without us at least. My parents want the whole family together again. She's agreed to a compromise that she's willing to do holidays and family outings as long as we never tell the children that our son is from a surrogate. Our parents think we should do this because she has a point, and they were always uneasy with it. I don't agree. This isn't some shameful secret that we should be ashamed of. We didn't do anything wrong. My wife is adamant that we shouldn't but wants our son to have a cousin. My parents are calling me as much as I'll answer to beg me to consider. My brother just wants the tension to stop and isn't going to fight with her anymore. My brother and I were adopted into the same family. He's white and I'm a dark-skinned black woman. Our parents were an interracial couple and our family had some unique challenges over the years, but our parents did their very best by us and tried their hardest to get us as much information as possible with our birth families. It was a little easier with mine because I was orphaned and I had 2 older living birth relatives who were just incapable of caring for me and needed care themselves. My brother had a very different story and he had no information at all. When he was 20, he met his wife. They married after 2 years of dating. She always gave me bad vibes. Around the time they got engaged, he told me she kept bringing up his birth family and how he should find them before the wedding. I had told him he didn't have to do anything, but he knew Mom and Dad would help him and he'd have my support. She went behind his back to find him via DNA and it was a shit show. But for some reason he forgave her and decided to meet the people, which she was thrilled about. It was around that time she told me to get lost because he had sisters who were actually related to him and not, you can guess the slur, who always made his life more difficult. She told me I was crazy if I thought I'd be in her wedding photos. She also said our parents should get used to having only one child. My brother had already started to pull away by then, and because I was hurt and angry, I never told him what went down between his now wife and I chose to not attend his wedding, and I know from our parents that the day was very messy. 6 years of no contact happened and then he reached out and apologized for letting anything come between us. We have been back on speaking terms for over a year now. It took a while, but we are doing so much better. I always loved my brother but was hurt by the stuff that went down between us and me and his wife. A few days ago, my brother's family ended up in a shelter. He lost the job he had for many years and took a huge pay cut in the new one at the same time that his former landlord decided to illegally kick them out by changing the locks. My brother did contact a lawyer, but nothing is as fast as they show in TV and the movies, and they have no place to go. I live in the same city, which would allow him to keep what job he has now at least, and so he asked if they could stay. I said I would help him and the kids and they could stay. But his wife is not welcome in my home. He told me he would take that, which did surprise me some. His wife is pissed. She came after me about separating her children from her and how unhealthy it will be for them to see her in a shithole while they're safe and comfortable with me. She called me all kinds of names like petty and bitchy and an asshole. But it was the comment about the kids that got me questioning. AITA? So my 22F cousin, Becky, 22F, got engaged over New Year's. When Becky's fiancé asked my uncle's permission, my uncle offered my grandma's engagement ring. She died when we're 3, because he thought that he had the ring. The ring had already passed through 2 generations to get to my grandmother, so he wanted to continue the tradition. The ring wasn't willed to anyone, nor did she verbally say who she wanted the rings to go to, as far as I'm aware, but my uncle thought that he had it because he was the oldest brother. Anyway, it turns out that after my grandma died, in the process of clearing out her flat and stuff, my dad ended up with her engagement ring and wedding band. Over COVID lockdowns, we were having a clear out to see what we could donate to charity shops, and we found the rings with some of my grandma's other stuff in the attic. I asked my dad if he could have the engagement ring because I think it's pretty, emerald and diamond. I paid to have the ring cleaned, replated, and have the settings checked. I now wear the ring fairly regularly because since starting my career after uni, I've started to wear more jewelry because I think it's a simple way of looking more put together and polished. My uncle, aunt and cousin, we're both only children, have been hunting around their house for the rings since late October, and Becky's fiancé proposed with some costume jewelry. My parents and I didn't know about any of this at the time. Over the weekend, Becky had her engagement party. I wore the ring not thinking much of it because it went with what I was wearing, green velvet jumpsuit. Of course, Becky and my uncle recognized the ring right away, accusing my dad of stealing from under them when my grandma died. He was there first and my parents did the majority of the packing cause she lived closer to us, and accusing me of wearing it just to spite them and telling me that I ruined the evening and demanding that I give the ring over. I told them I didn't know they were looking for the ring, and if they had mentioned it to me or my parents we could have told them I had the ring. I don't want to give her the ring because I consider it my ring. It ended up with my dad and he gave it to me. I paid for it to be resized, cleaned, replated, settings fixed. It's my favorite, most worn piece of jewelry. Because I like how it looks and the sentimental value of it being my grandma's, because I don't really remember her, so it helps me feel connected to her. And my grandma expressed no preference to who the ring went to. They argue that Becky should get the ring because she's the daughter of the eldest son. My aunt is the only girl and currently has no children or plans to get married. And Becky got engaged first, so she should get the ring for that. Update. Original post can be found here. https://www.reddit.com/r/amethyst/AITA_for_no_with_no_limit/thank you for all the insight and support. I have an update. Edit. Sil equals son-in-law in this post. I understand people are confusing it with sister-in-law. The second day after the argument, my parents lovingly got involved. My dad is the wise old man and my mom is the perpetual peacemaker. So they invited my daughter and son-in-law, Sil, over a couple days into this argument and had a talk with them about the whole situation. They calmly listened to the kids and had a candid talk about the situation. My mom pointed out that being estranged and or tense with the parents on her wedding day was not something that my daughter wanted. By the time the talk was over, my daughter and Sil fully understood that they had been extremely inappropriate. The next day my Sil sent me a very large mixed bouquet of my favorite flowers to my work. Later that evening they both stopped by to apologize in person. They brought a nice gift basket of some of mine and her dad's favorite things. They told us that they had both realized the next day, after the argument, that they were rude and disrespectful once they understood that what we were doing and paying for the bar contract was more than reasonable. They said they had felt guilty for yelling at me, but at the time, were still angry that I made arrangements for the bar contract without them having a say in it. So they continued to just ignore our calls until my dad pointed out that I was well within my rights to do what I did, since my husband and I were the wedding benefactors and I was the sole, legally responsible party for the bar contract. He also pointed out it was logical common sense to protect the budget. And the bottom line is that while it would have been a courtesy to include them in the conversation because it was their wedding, it ultimately wasn't their business how I negotiated the bar contract, as it was not their money paying for it. He also pointed out that I had been more than generous and reasonable and did not screw them over or humiliate them as hosts. And they realized that's true. So this past weekend was the wedding. It was a beautiful wedding. A fun, happy day. Overall it was low stress and just an enjoyable day. At the reception my Sil nabbed me for a dance and told me he's very grateful for having me and my husband in his life, as we're the good and stable parents he didn't have, and he loves us both. He told me he told my husband the same thing while they were getting ready. My husband was there, his dad wasn't. It wasn't lost on him at what good parents we are to him too. As for the alcohol per bar tab, we did not go over budget by a long shot, and everyone had plenty of options and didn't go without. There was a total of one younger man who got completely wasted. He wasn't a fighter and wasn't causing any problems. He had his GF with him and they had a hotel room rented at the venue, so they let him be. A couple more people were fairly drunk but not troublesome. So now, they're on their honeymoon and we're dog-sitting their corgi. All is good. Edit. The corgi tax has been paid. I think. I'm not sure if I did it correctly. I believe I added the pics to my profile. One from the wedding and the other just today.